up, swashbucklers? You're listening to Under the Crossbones, episode number 41. My name is Phil Johnson. I'm your host. Thank you for tuning into the show. This is episode number 41. Fun fact about the number 41, there are 41 college bowl games, none of which I watch. I don't watch a single one of them, but I do like some of the names, man. The Popeyes Bahamas Bowl, because apparently Popeye's chicken, big in the Bahamas. Who knew? The Zaxby's Heart of Dallas Bowl, which I assume takes place in Philadelphia. The New Era Pinstripe Bowl. I've never seen pinstripe. I hope the uniforms. I hope the uniforms have pinstripes on them. That would be so cool. The Franklin American Mortgage Music City Bowl in Nashville, because that's what Nashville is known for, is mortgages. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. I don't know. Do they have peaches? It's in Atlanta, so that makes sense. But I don't know if they have peaches at Chick-fil-A. And the best one, the Tax Slayer Bowl in Jacksonville. I don't know about Tax Slayer. I want to just see the Slayer Bowl. That would be much more musically interesting. So anyway, thanks for hanging out on the show today. The website's underthecrossbones.com. The show notes are at /041. You can get my latest comedy special, Pretty From the Back, at philjohnsоncomedy.com. My guest on the show today is Mark Hanna. He's the author of a book called Pirates... blah, 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 blah. Let's try that again. We're going to try that again. You ready? Here we go. My guest on the show today is Mark Hanna. He's the author of a book called Pirate Nests and the Rise of the British Empire, 1570 to 1740. And this is a really cool book about all the land-based stuff. So we're getting off the water and talking about the land-based stuff, the politicians, the Puritans, the towns that were making giving the pirates enough leeway to do their work, and why that was happening. We're going to talk about the Puritans illegally minting coins. We're going to talk about the perspective from the land-based towns that everything these guys were doing was pretty legal. We're going to talk about militant Protestantism. There's a lot of good stuff in this discussion. You're totally going to dig it. It's lots of fun. If you're a fan of the show, which I hope you are, you're listening, and you're subscribed, right? So you get all the episodes automatically downloaded to your device every week. You're subscribed. That's how that happens. It's very easy. Anyway, if you're liking the show, join us on Facebook, facebook.com/underthecrossbones. You can find us on Twitter at undercrossbones. There wasn't enough room for a the. And of course, all the show notes for this show are at underthecrossbones.com/041. Lots of cool guests coming up, too. We've got authors, including Peter Leeson, who wrote The Invisible Hook, Laura Nelson of Wit a Pirate Speak. We got pirate clans, pirate clothes, pirate game design, cannon building. Lots more stuff coming up. Super. It's going to be fun. Stay tuned. All right, so I'm actually doing this episode a little bit earlier than usual because I am leaving tomorrow morning for, drumroll, an actual vacation. Yeah, it's a thing that doesn't happen very often. I do a lot of traveling, but rarely do I actually just take a vacation. And so my girlfriend and I are going to Universal Studios Hollywood, and we are going to Harry Potter our fool heads off because they just opened the Harry Potter stuff down there about 6 weeks ago. We're going to go check it out, and when I get back, I will tell you all about it because I'm a Harry Potter fan. Dig it. I'm going to go see The Simpsons. I haven't been to Universal Studios in quite a while, and apparently 75% of the park is totally different from the last time I've been there. So it's going to be good. We're going to have dinner with my brother and his wife down there. I'm going to finally meet my niece, Charlotte, who is now 4 months old and has yet to meet her Uncle Phil. So that's going to happen. And it's our anniversary this weekend. So we're just packing everything into the whole thing. It's our anniversary, 24 years. My girlfriend and I have been together. And as I say in my show, we're not married yet, which means I win. So it's all good. It's all good. But I am going to be back on the road doing tour dates immediately after that. May the 17th, I'll be at the Layover in Oakland, California. May the 19th, I'll be headlining the Gold Country Casino in Oroville, California. May 25th, I'm headlining a place called Ralston's Goat in Modesto, California. Never played a place with the name Goat in the title before, so that'll be interesting. May 27 and 28, I'll be at the Comedy Palace, San Diego, California. June 2 through 4, I'll be at Looney's Comedy Club in Colorado Springs, Colorado. June 10 through 12, I'll be at the Edgewater Casino in Laughlin, Nevada. June 13th at the Honda Casino in Pinetop, Arizona. June 15th at the Ice House Comedy Club in Pasadena, filming for Comedy Time there. And June 17th, I'll be at the Throckmorton Theater in Mill Valley, California. This is a great show. It's going to be really fun. It's called The Last Late Show. And the premise is that the world is ending tomorrow, and this is the last late night talk show ever. It's really great. I'm the special musical guest. I've written a special song for the event. If you're anywhere near Mill Valley, California, come on out June 17th to see the Last Light Show. It's going to be super fun. June 18th and 19th, I will be hanging around the NorCal Pirate Fest. Because I kind of feel it's my duty this year to do that. And I am going to... I'm going to take a recorder out there, and I'm going to hopefully record some interviews. So listen for that in the future. And if you see me around, come and say hi while we're hanging out. Yeah. June 25th, I'll be at the Windmill Winery, Tracy, California, and headlining that show. And then more stuff coming up, Indiana, Florida, Washington, Oregon, lots of places. If you want to find out when I'm coming to your town, go to underthecrossbones.com. and click on the tour dates button. And if I'm not coming to your town, tell your local club that you want to see me, or just have me come and do a house concert. I will play your living room. It happens. It's fun. If you want to support the show, I appreciate that. It's very easy. All you do is go to underthecrossbones.com/support. There's a little PayPal box. You can dump a donation in there. There's an Amazon banner. Click that. Buy yourself something nice. I get a little kickback. You support the show that way. And if you want to be a sponsor of the show, very easy, very cheap. Just hit the support page. Contact me, and I'll hook you up with that. All right? So I'm going to cut this a little bit short today because I still have to pack for my vacation, and this is going to be a blast. So let's get into the interview with author Mark Hanna. Here we go. So you are an author of the book Pirate Nests and the Rise of the British Empire, and it takes a very different tact on the whole pirate thing, because you're talking about what happens on land, which most people don't talk about all that much. It's all about the sea. So give me a little synopsis of the book and what we're dealing with in there.
The book is basically about the support of piracy on the peripheries of the British Empire, maritime communities, and it essentially makes the argument that piracy really couldn't exist if it didn't have its support on land for fairly obvious reasons. They need crews to fit out ships. You need legal documents to protect you from being executed if possible. You need markets to sell your goods. And also, from the flip side, the relationship of these sort of very fledgling communities and their attempt to survive in the early years of colonization really required plunder to go along with plantation, in the sense that they needed a local medium of exchange, meaning they needed currency, they needed goods that were sort of blocked by monopoly companies. And so it really is this sort of symbiotic relationship that exists in different parts of the peripheries of the empire at different time periods. So it begins with Elizabethan England, talking about the West Country, which is the Devon and Cornwall, and then moves outward into sort of colonization phase of Jamestown, Bermuda, Boston. Eventually, chapter 3 is about Jamaica, and that Jamaica supported piracy, and then stops, and then it moves out to the North American colonies. So the big picture of the book is essentially about the rise and subsequent fall of this sort of support, and it's fairly dramatic. It's a very blatant, aggressive, open support of piracy, and then by the 17 teens, a very aggressive attack against these people who they once supported.
Interesting. So when you talk about the need for goods coming into the plantations and things like that, essentially smuggling and fencing stolen goods, is that what we're dealing with there?
Yeah, I wouldn't say smuggling, because they're really completely going against any attempts to regulate these products, but it really is fencing of goods. And so I'd say that there are three major necessities that were really not easily obtained on the peripheries. One was currency, so silver and gold, but primarily silver. And really, it's the inability to sort of trade legally with the Spanish that really compels pirates, or allows pirates to sort of flourish by attacking them and then selling their goods and silver to the colonies, where they had a constant sort of drainage of currency. The other is a market for labor, which is the slave trade. And the East Royal African Company was a monopoly on the slave trade that typically sold their slaves to higher demand markets like Barbados, and then resold them sometimes to the Spanish. So places like South Carolina, Virginia, and the early period of Jamaica, pirates would actually steal slaves and sell them into these markets. And then the third were luxury items from what were called the East Indies, which is the Indian Ocean, into the Red Sea. And those were calico, which is a cheap kind of cotton that was easily printed, and silk, and other luxury items that were heavily, heavily desired in the American colonies, but were really way too expensive because it was controlled by the East India Company monopoly, that by the time it ended up in the colonies, the costs would be exorbitant. So pirates would enter the Red Sea, attack Muslim pilgrimage vessels on their way to Mecca, and then take those goods back to the colonies.
Interesting. And so then who is on the flip side? Who is against this, not just in lip service, but actually against all this activity?
So the people who are really against it would, of course, have been the monopoly companies themselves, because their ships and their factors or their agents would be threatened by the local sort of agents, let's say in India or in Africa, but also royal officials in the American colonies. So the people who are really some of the main actors in the book are the sort of figures who are very much associated with royal patronage.
Okay.
So meaning customs officials or governors who are actually in royal colonies specifically, meaning that their salary was paid directly from the crown. Governors that were beholden to locals. So governors who were part of what were charter companies, which are basically local control, or proprietary colonies, which are controlled by a handful of individuals. Those governors were very active in supporting pirates, in large part because they really wanted to obtain luxury items. They wanted their wives to wear nice silk dresses and look like they were at the top of the social hierarchy. So those are the most blatant supporters, and the most sort of frequent attackers of pirates tended to be these individuals that were not beholden to the local community.
Oh, I see. Okay. Interesting. So is this your first book?
Yes.
It is. Great. How did you, because I see you're a history professor at UC San Diego, which is, I don't know how anybody in San Diego ever gets anything accomplished besides going to the beach. When
I first moved to San Diego, actually, there was a bit of a panic of that exact reason. I thought, like, if I work indoors. You know, it's hard for me to actually want to be indoors most of the time in San Diego. So I had to figure out how to work in coffee shops where I could be outside and still be on my computer.
There you go. Where did you come from originally?
I grew up in New Jersey, but I got my PhD at Harvard. So I spent a large chunk of my time in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So it's a big switch moving here. Nice.
Yeah. San Diego is such a beautiful town. It's the only place I'd move besides where I live here in San Jose. It's just a fantastic city. And so you are a history professor there, and I saw that you are a chair at the Maritime Museum. How did you get into the whole maritime thing? Why pirates? Why that sort of angle?
So when I actually went to grad school many years ago, and I actually went to work on family history. I actually wanted to work on fatherhood in early America.
Oh.
And which is very strange for a lot of people to know that.
Yeah.
And I took sort of general exams on social history, Puritanism, family history. And so I wrote what I thought was going to be a chapter of my dissertation. It was about a guy named William Harris. And Harris was one of the sort of original founders of what is today Rhode Island. And I was interested in him because he built up this huge estate through these sort of legal wranglings and lawsuits. And he was very much a Puritan. He had these Puritan named kids like How Long, which meant how long until the apocalypse. So this is a fascinating guy, and he wrote a will that went into 7 generations, so I was interested in inheritance and how he envisioned himself. But when he was in his 60s, he needed to sail to London to pursue one of his lawsuits, and on his way there, he was captured by Algerian pirates. And he was enslaved in Algiers, which is in North Africa, and he wrote these pitiable letters back home saying, "Please free me or I'll die," and eventually they ransomed him. He made his way to London. He died weeks afterwards. And I thought, well, this is a chapter about fatherhood, and I presented it to a group of people, including my advisors. And one of my colleagues said, I have to admit the last 4 pages of this chapter is the best part. And I said, well, it's pretty minor. It's sort of the end of an interesting story. And they said, well, look, I work on Charleston, South Carolina. These pirates show up in the 1680s, and no one seems to think it's a big deal. And I work on, immigration in South Carolina, so it doesn't really matter to me. And I put it in a footnote. And someone else said, yeah, it's interesting. I work in Newport, Rhode Island. In the 1690s, all these pirates show up, and one of them, I think, bought land. And I didn't know what I thought it was interesting, but I didn't, know what to make of it. No one's ever written about these people. So I thought, this is terrible news, because I already had a dissertation. Piracy was not something that was really significantly written about or taken very seriously at the time.
Sure.
So I said, look, I'm going to spend a month in the archives, and I'm going to read everything I can, the governor's letters, legal documents, sort of customs officials' correspondences, and we'll see if this is actually a significant thing. And I found pirates everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And it was shocking. And it was the sheer amount of information that was out there about these pirates. And what's interesting is they were really boring. They would sort of attack and capture ships and be successful, and then they buy land, marry local women, settle down, and not take to the sea again.
Right.
And I thought, this is really significant. But everyone who's ever written about it in the past has sort of been caught up with the sort of swashbuckling stories, and they've been less interested in the sort of smaller stories about economics, law, politics.
Sure.
Yeah. So the big picture was, I think this is really great for me as a historian, because I think most histories of piracy start off where the authors are fans,
Uh-huh.
They either dressed as kids or dressed as pirates when they were kids,
Right.
or they, were into the movies. And so when they write about piracy as historians, they typically focus on the sort of swashbuckling adventures and not so much these sort of average individual people who might have married them or supported them or welcomed them on land. So for me, all the questions that I have are not really fan questions. They're questions that are historian questions.
Right.
What does it say about colonial economics? What can this teach us about global currency exchange? What can this teach us about the development of international law? What does this teach us about how empires are formed and transformed over many years? So the bigger questions for me were questions that where the pirates were there very prominently, but they were really sort of not the center of the story.
Interesting. And so where did you find that there was any, I know it moved around a little bit through history, but was there sort of a home base where that kind of thing was more prominent than others?
Yeah, so the book's title, Pirate Nest, is actually a pejorative term used by royal officials to describe specific areas and places where the economy really needed the goods brought by pirates, and really where the entire community sort of functioned supporting these pirates. And it was used at various times in various places. So Plymouth in England was a pirate nest at the end of Elizabeth I's reign, in large part because it was sort of absolutely necessary for their economy. And when James I takes power, they transformed their economy into serving the plantations or fishing in the Newfoundland fisheries. And so then piracy moves outward. So essentially you see a series of circumstances at particular places and particular times where pirate nests arise. And when those circumstances change, then they no longer are necessary. So you start to see, for example, places where the legal system or the apparatus that would actually be there to try pirates is usually very weak or misunderstood or confusing. You have political systems where the power is very local, meaning you might have a very strong merchant community that actually has some authority over their governor. You see sort of imperial regulations very weak in these places. You also see sort of a pop culture, and I write a lot about sort of literature and popular culture. You see a pop culture that defends these people and doesn't really consider them pirates, and that's actually one of the cruxes of the book is the use of the word pirate, where people do they actually self-identify as pirate or not. That's
interesting. Now, when you say pop culture, was that sort of print media at the time and things like that, sort of turning them into heroes, or?
Yeah, so it would be, journals that were published by people who had formerly been pirates.
Okay.
There are a number of people who had committed acts of piracy in the 1670s and 80s who, for one reason or another, were never tried or were pardoned, and they wrote, journals about their adventures. And I have my students read these journals, and the vast majority about plants and animals, and they're sometimes a little disappointed that there's not that much swashbuckling stuff going on. If you look at some of them, they describe monkeys, they describe parrots, they describe plants, and they're just like, wait, how come there's no fighting going on?
Right. That's funny. And so what do you think, it was coming and going and circumstances would change. What do you think were the big circumstances that put an end to it altogether? So it happened very quickly. Actually, relative to an early American historian sort of chronology, we always think of things changing over, decades and centuries. Sure. And this actually happened almost in a one single decade. Huh. And beginning really in 1696, there was a massive trial in London that really exposed the relationship of these communities with piracy. It shook up a lot of significant figures in England who had been ministering in the empire to realize that this had been happening and how blatant it was. So they began a number of changes. One is creating a vice admiralty system which took away the authority of a jury to try pirates, and it gave it to a handful of commissioned people, which was very angrily rebelled against in the American colonies for a number of reasons, but in the end became useful in prosecuting pirates. The other, and I think really probably more important in the big picture, is each of those three major commodity groups that I talked about that these colonies just really wanted, each of those monopolies became challenged by the 1690s. Okay. East India Company monopoly gets challenged by a new East India Company. In fact, calico competed with wool in England, so they banned calico at one point, which meant that they reshipped it to the colonies and made it much cheaper. So the pirates were not as necessary. And then you had the Royal African Company gets very dramatically challenged. In fact, what we could call interloping traders were allowed to trade on their own for slaves. And so all of a sudden,
a huge number of slaves start entering the colonies legally. And so by that time, they start looking around and saying, well, these people aren't quite as necessary as they were before. And so the ability of royal officials to sort of go after these people becomes easier and easier. And that's only a handful of reasons. In fact, the book itself sort of tries to weave together sort of these complex variables of law, politics, economics, etc., and show how they sort of all interrelated together. But that's among many of these sort of massive transformations.
Okay, yeah, and it sounds like it was just the idea that all this kind of stuff is more legal now, so we don't need you illegal guys doing it.
Yeah.
Do you see any reverberations from that time period that we still see today in our markets now?
Yeah, in fact, actually, obviously it's not going to be exactly the same because we are many, many years away, but many of the sort of basic principles you could see in Somalia, in the Straits of Malacca and other places, which essentially what we call a disequilibrium of trade, meaning a heavily desire for goods, yet an inability to acquire those goods. For Somalia, that's certainly the case. You see very strong local political regimes with a very weak central political regime, so that a central, let's say in Somalia, it's typically what's happening in Puntland, whereas there's just very local officials who needed these goods were actually the ones in charge. In fact, there's very little central administrative authority that could do much to sort of keep tabs on them. You see a culture. I think this is important to sort of see a popular culture that envisions these individuals as heroic in some respects.
Sure, yeah.
This is actually true of a lot of major criminal figures. This is true of cartels in Colombia or in Mexico as well, where these are local heroes. They're the ones who build the schools. They're the ones who build the hospitals. And in the big picture, we say, well, this is international crime. But on a local level, it is possible for both the individual people who commit these acts as well as communities that support them to justify their behavior and see their behavior as justified and legitimately so. I think one of the things that I've had people say to me about the book is how corrupt a lot of these local people are, and I think they're missing one of the major points that I'm trying to make, which is that I think a lot of them genuinely did believe what they were saying when they called someone who committed an act of piracy against the Spanish, but had some paperwork that they bought some weird from a governor on St. Thomas that says, attack whoever you want. They called themselves privateers. I think they generally knew what they were doing was illegal, but they think they were able to use the word privateer in a way that makes them feel that they were justified in some respects.
Sure.
So I think it's too simplistic to say. I think it's too simplistic to say that these communities are simply composed of greedy individuals. And I think the book tries to highlight in a lot of specific detail that they felt justified, and in some respects they might have been justified. I mean, the perception of violence and what's legitimate violence is very different in the 17th, 18th century than it is now. And I think this is true of a lot of these communities that see piracy and illicit activities today. I think all of them feel justified and often feel like they are doing something that's good for the local community and maybe not so much for the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's true. Even if we were to go into, say, Rhode Island or North Carolina now, could we trace the progress of those states back to money or family money from that time period or illicit goods and things like that? Yeah,
I mean, you could. In fact, I think one of the more interesting, more tangible ways of doing that is I talk quite a bit about currency and silver.
Okay.
And in the 1680s, 1690s, in Newport, Rhode Island, and in Boston, they were constantly writing about how we have no silver, and because of what we now have called, and that's changed, which is mercantilist policies, economic policies centering around London, which forced the colonies to pay for English manufacturers with silver. That they were constantly saying, "Oh, silver's being drained out of the colonies. This is terrible. This is, what are you going to do? This is a struggle." But if you go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and you go to sort of the material culture section for early America, you'll find silver everywhere. Communion silver, you find silver plates, silver, candlesticks. So you have to say, how is it that you're having this sort of this struggle, and yet all of a sudden we have the silver that's being beautifully made into all these various objects? It's because this is being brought by pirates, and because of the market and the way it is that they, these individual merchants who had bought silver from the pirates were actually figuring rather than put it back into the market, they would actually turn it into candlesticks and communion silver. And so sometimes it's sort of one of these funny things that people say, wow, this communion silver is amazing. It's incredibly beautiful. And I say, well, got to ask yourself the question of where do you think this came from?
Right.
There are a lot of legal sources for silver to arrive in Boston or Newport. It pretty much all comes from a certain place. And
sure.
So that you see that as a sort of basis of this sort of economic development comes from these illicit means. One other example that's actually sort of interesting is the most sort of famous coin of early America is called the Pine Tree Shilling.
Okay.
And the Pine Tree Shilling it's famous in the fact that it's actually illicit to create your own mint. Minting a coin is actually a royal prerogative.
Sure.
And so they did this during the English Civil War when there was no king. And they were minting these goods. And royal officials were saying, or people who were later crown officials were saying, wait, we know where all this money is coming from. They're minting pirate money that's brought in from people attacking the Spanish illegally. When the crown is restored in 1660, they keep minting this coin, the Pine Tree Shilling, and that and they kept the year 1652 on the coin. Just the idea of like, oh, these are all old coins. What are you talking about? And so these are Puritans doing this. These are the most religiously upstanding people in their communities who are supporting this.
Sure.
So I think actually one of the things I haven't talked about, I talked about economics, politics, etc., but I haven't talked about religion. And there's a lot of religion in the book.
Okay.
And this is because I think people think about Puritans and sort of radical Protestants. We sort of ignore the militant side of it.
Yeah, and there definitely is that. Yeah.
There's an aggressive militant side. In fact, the guy on the cover of my book is the Earl of Warwick, who is a Puritan. He doesn't look like it in the picture on the cover, but he's a Puritan. He has his own fleet of ships, and his fleet of ships plunder the Spanish during times of peace. And he's very comfortable and happy about doing that because of his understanding of radical Protestantism and what they deemed as Puritanism was really an aggressive attack on what they call the Spanish Antichrist or the Catholic Antichrist.
Makes sense.
So it's in many respects, it's one of the premier justifications for this behavior. And the alternatively, when these pirates enter the Indian Ocean, they attack Muslim pilgrimage vessels. They're sailing from Mughal Empire in India to Mecca and Jeddah, and they feel justified because there's always that inkling that perhaps the Antichrist is not Catholic, perhaps it's Muslim. and so there's a lot of and you read the records, and these people who commit acts of piracy do state in the records that we do not think this is wrong, that this is something that we feel totally justified in doing.
Right. That's fascinating. Some things never change, I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think I feel that when I read about these very aggressive militant sort of worldviews, I feel more comfortable understanding them now, having written this book and seeing how people are constantly justifying what they think is okay.
Yeah. And so, what's your next project? Will there be another book?
Yes. So this next project is actually also dealing with piracy, but in a very different way. It is about the use of piracy as sort of a rhetorical weapon to attack sort of morally ambiguous problems in the past. And I'll give you an example, which is that according to international law, this is through the 17th, 18th, and the 19th century, piracy was determined as one of the worst of all possible crimes. And the reason is that it takes place on the high seas, away from communities, and the ability of a community to sort of regulate itself and sort of police its own state. And it also involves nations, not just individual people. And so everyone agrees that piracy is terrible, but during the early modern period, many other things that took place on the seas, they were not quite sure whether they were morally correct or not. One would be the slave trade, for example. Sure. Which the slave trade, many thought was not only justifiable, but a good thing in the 17th century because you were saving people from becoming, dying and, not being saved to Christianity, among other reasons. And so those who attacked the slave trade were able to do so by saying, this is a form of piracy. This is a stealing of a human being. This is selling a human being away from their home. This is like another product. This is a form of piracy. And so during the 19th century, this actually was a successful rhetorical weapon. In fact, most of the nations of the world by the middle of the 19th century actually had the slave trade defined as a form of piracy on their books.
Oh, okay.
And so another would be, for example, I talk about revolutions. At what point does a revolutionary stop being a pirate and become an actual soldier or warrior? So the American Revolution, the British passed the Piracy Act 1777 that basically said any patriot caught at sea will be determined as a pirate. And it's not simply rhetorical, because essentially, if the British were to accept that these are legitimately prisoners of war and not pirates, it means that they're accepting legitimacy of the revolution.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You see what I mean? And so it's not simply about sort of, bombast or going after something in the press, but in fact, there's legal ramifications for determining whether an act is piracy or not piracy.
Right. Fascinating. That's fantastic.
It's all material that I wrote. I took many years to write this first book, and these are things I kept finding over and over and over again over the years that were really interesting that didn't really fit in the first book. And so I've been holding them back and sort of over years collecting, and now all of a sudden I'm ready to go and put it all together. So
that's great. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that book too. So the current one that's out is Pirate Nests and the Rise of the British Empire, 1570 to 1740. And I believe I did see it on Amazon. Is that correct?
It is on Amazon.
Great.
You can also buy it at University of North Carolina Press.
Okay.
And I have just to say, it just recently won the Frederick Jackson Turner Prize for best first book in American history by the Organization of American Historians.
Oh, congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you. So that's the press release that OH just sent, so I can send that to you.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Well, this has been super fun, Mark. It sounds like a fascinating book, and I'm going to have to scrape together some money to purchase it so I can read the whole darn thing.
Well, great. I appreciate it.
You bet. Is there anything I didn't ask about that you want my listeners to know?
No, I think this is good.
Cool.
I think you asked the main basic fundamental questions, so it's great.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet. I'll talk to you later.
Happy to be on there.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And there it is, friends. That was my interview with author Mark Hanna. You can find out more about him and get his book at uncpress.unc.edu. Oh, those EDUs. They have such long domain names. The name of the book is Pirate Nests and the Rise of the British Empire, 1570 to 1740. As we mentioned, it's also on Amazon. There will be a link to that on the show notes under thecrossbones.com/041, and you can just link it through right there, and you support the show with a little kickback, a little commission from me, so that's nice. Hey, there's pirates in the world. They're everywhere, and they're trying to steal your information, and I don't want them to steal your information because it's a giant hassle. Identity theft is a drag, man. And it's like the number 2 crime in the world now. Like, it's probably like, I don't know, drugs and then identity theft, or I don't know, petty thievery and then identity theft. I don't know. Anyway, you don't want your identity stolen because it super sucks and it's a pain in the butt to fix it. But there's a way that you can fix it, or not. Well, fix it and avoid it. You get yourself a LifeLock membership, and they're cheap and it's monthly. And what they do is they go out to the dark, ugly parts of the web, and they make sure that your information isn't sitting out around there for sale for some skeezy dude. And then if they do find it, they will help you fix it. If your identity gets stolen, they will help you fix it. And that's the best part, because like the free credit monitoring services you get through your credit cards and stuff like that, they don't do much of that part. They'll go, hey, something happened, but they won't help you fix it. LifeLock will help you fix it. And right now you can get 10% off your membership. All you have to do is go to underthecrossbones.com/LifeLock and click the start your membership button, and you can get 10% off. And it's super cheap. It's like $9-10 a month. And it's good for your peace of mind. I have it. It's wonderful. They have helped me catch a bunch of stuff over the last few years. If you want, I got a free pirate book for you. It is called The Pirates of Panama or The Buccaneers of America, whichever title you prefer, because you'll find it under both titles. It is by Alexander Exquemelin, which after 41 episodes, I'm finally getting used to saying Exquemelin. And it's actually kind of fun in a sort of fun way. Exquemelin. I don't know. Try it. See if you can say it 10 times fast. I'll bet you can, because I can. But if you want this book, it is one of the seminal pieces of pirate writing from the golden age of piracy, written as a second-hand account. Very cool stuff, and you can have it for free. All you do is go to underthecrossbones.com and click on the free ebook link, free ebook. Or if you're just out and about and all you got your phone with you, then all you have to do is text the word pirate and your email address to 94253. Text the word pirate and your email address to 94253. It'll kick you back a little link to download the book, and you'll be all good. All right? You ready for some comedy? You ready for some music? I feel like that's the introduction at a comedy club, right? Like I go, "Are you ready for some comedy?" And you're supposed to be in your car listening to this, going, "Woo!" clapping your hands and stuff, and I go, no, we can do better than that. Are you ready for some comedy? And then you'll be in the middle of the street jogging and going, woo! And nobody will know why. You'll just look like a crazy person, but do it. It's fun. Yeah. All right. So comedy today. We've got comedy from a guy named Shane Morrison. It's weird. It's quirky. It's musical. You're gonna dig it. It's pretty funny stuff. And then we have some music. We got a song called "Just One More Time" by a country band called Flash, Crash, and Thunder. And this is good country, not the crappy radio country, not the stuff you see. It's good country. It's good real country. So that's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Let's dig into it. This is comedy from Shane Morrison and a song called "Just One More Time" from Flash, Crash, and Thunder. Here we go.
I work in a bar. I see a lot of different kinds of people. Working as a bouncer, I see a lot of hot chicks, see a lot of alcoholics. And then you get your weird, creepy guy that comes in and scares all the people, comes by himself, that kind of guy. I don't mind that guy, but people complain about that type of guy. That kind of guy looks like he's got bodies in his basement. Kind of dude, man. So I wrote a song called "Bodies in My Basement" about that type of guy who feels like this. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. People think I have bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. This is sang through the weird guy's perspective. Bodies in my basement. I stand alone in the bar and I look really weird when it comes to girls. I have very weird bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. Look out. Bodies in my basement. People think I have bodies in my basement. Alright. When I go in, people go out. I say, hey, what's this all about? It's bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. Bodies in my basement. Everybody thinks I have bodies in my basement. When I'm on the dance floor, people start to scatter. I got my hands in my pants and it doesn't really matter. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. Where's everybody going? Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. I have to talk to you because you're not talking to me. Hey, would you mind if I watch you take a pee? Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. Look out. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. I stare at girls for way too long. I want to feel their butts, and I don't care if it's wrong. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. Come on, feel it. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. I like this girl. She works at Borders, but I can't go near her because she's got restraining orders. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. A nice guy doesn't know me. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. I get kicked out of bars because people complain. Everywhere I go, it's always the same. It's bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. When I greet a girl, I go for a hug and a kiss, but all I get's a slap and a diss. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. Just one more kiss. Bodies in my basement. I'll pay her. Bodies in my basement. I say, hey, you want to try this brazier? She says, ew, you don't even work here. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement. I'm here all the time. I know where everything is. It's over there. Bodies in my basement. Got bodies in my basement.
Just one more time, I'll let you have your way with me. One more time, sweet darling, and I'm gonna set you free. You made me a prisoner, and loving is my crime. So I'll let you have your way just one more time. Just one more time, I'll let you walk right through that door. One more time, from now on I'm keeping score. Your heart is full of poison, but loving is so fine. So I'll let you have your way just one more time. Leave me if you don't need me. Go on and make up your mind. Never again will you hear me say that I'll let you have your way just one more time. Just one more time, I'll let you have your way with me one more time, sweet darling, and gonna set you free. You made me a prisoner and loving is my crime, so I'll let you have your way just one more time. Leave me if you don't need me. Go on and make up your mind. Never again will you hear me say that I'll let you have your way just one more time. Just one more time. Just one more time. One more time.
And that's our show for today, friends. Thank you for listening to Under the Crossbones each and every week. I appreciate it. You can get all the show notes and links and all that good stuff for this episode at underthecrossbones.com/041. That will include links to Mark Hanna's website and his book, which you definitely have to get. If you want to find out more about Mark Hanna, uncpress.unc.edu. If you want to hear more from Shane Morrison, the comedian, go to soundcloud.com/HaneOrison. Yeah, that's Shane Morrison without the S&M, because I guess he's not into that, I guess. You can also find him on YouTube. Just Google, just search Shane Morrison on YouTube. If you want to hear from more from Flash, Crash, and Thunder, go to facebook.com/Flash, Crash, and Thunder. Man, that's kind of hard to say. And again, all the show notes for this episode, underthecrossbones.com/041. You can find me at philjohnsоncomedy.com. Keep leaving those iTunes reviews. They make me happy. They send us up the charts. It brings more people to the show. You can do a good thing today by leaving a positive iTunes review. Thank you. And that's it, my friends. I will catch you next week and give you all the updates on the vacation. I got to go pack now. Got to finish packing. All right? See you later.